The blow-by test, fact or fiction? I have a friend here in Melbourne who's looking at 240Ds, and so he suggested that I expeditiously put a video out about the blow-by test on 616, 617 and other Mercedes diesel engines. So the first question that I get from a lot of people is, what is the blow-by test? The blow-by test is when you unscrew the oil cap but leave it sitting on the valve cover and start the engine and see how much combustion gas you get out of the vehicle's crankcase in such a way that it either A, fills up a garbage bag within a certain amount of time, or B, causes the oil cap to hover because of the amount of blow-by present inside the motor. Now, is this test a reliable indicator of whether you have a healthy engine or not? I say no, and I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios that are going to help you understand this better. The first one is that the blow-by test usually changes depending on how well cared for a car has been. So if you have, I have a friend who has an 83 300D that he bought for $2,200 or so. And after 40,000 miles of loving and tender care, new injectors, regular valve adjustments, several oil changes at lower than average mileage, a rebuilt turbo, and some fuel system cleansing, the car actually turned out really good. The blow-by basically ceased, and most importantly, the car did not use oil, even at 4,000 mile oil change intervals, which is a little bit higher than they should be. Second of all, the blow-by test often does not hold up under RPM. I have a 1982 300D that I bought that was sitting since 1990 or 91, maybe even as far back as 89. While the car produces tons of blow-by at idle, as soon as I ramp the engine speed up to 1,000 RPMs, all blow-by ceases. In addition, I've driven this car extensively enough to know that it doesn't burn oil, it starts easily, it runs smoothly, and has tons of power, especially since I dialed in the ALDA. This car is a great example of how some cars that might fail the quote-unquote blow-by test still show up to be really healthy. Now, in John's case, he went to go look at this 240D, and this is the problem. The myth of this test is sort of like a rot or a disease in the Mercedes community when it comes to buying cars. John goes and starts this 240D that's got a weak battery that has been sitting for an undetermined amount of time, that has a glow plug relay that doesn't even glow long enough. It glowed for like 4 seconds or 5 seconds, and the car, on the second weak and feeble crank, the car started, fired up instantly. Yet John based his conclusion on the blow-by test, even though this car was shown to have excellent compression. Now, why is the blow-by test scientifically irrelevant? Well, it all boils down to data and statistics and numbers. Most cars that we service don't perform that well in the blow-by test, but also, when we service these cars regularly, unless they're a worn-out 78 300D that's been run on water-laden vegetable oil its whole life, generally the blow-by test improves after a valve adjustment and after some use. We typically see that the statistics people are not paying attention to are the ones that matter. Oil consumption data, acceleration, fuel consumption, these are the things that really matter. The blow-by test is sort of a cop-out. It's sort of a backwards way of avoiding a cylinder leak down test, which is complicated to do. So while I say if you look at a car and it passes the blow-by test, this is a great sign that it's a healthy car. But if you look at a car and it fails the blow-by test, it doesn't mean it's a bad car. It probably means that there's a bunch of carbon from the EGR covering the exhaust and intake valves. It probably means the valves haven't been set in a long time, which is a big one. It probably means the car has a bunch of goo and garbage on its rings from not really being serviced adequately, and it probably means that the car just needs some work to get it back up in running condition. I also find that the blow-by test should be carried out at speeds over 1500 RPM after a valve adjustment, and then see what you've got. But the real world indicator is always oil consumption. Oil consumption, oil consumption, oil consumption, followed by how well the car starts and runs. I mean, if you have a car that misses a little bit on cold startup, okay, whatever. You know, it misses a little bit on cold startup, runs well after 30 seconds. I have a 300 SD that has over 400,000 miles on it. Thank dumping this car into my lap that I barely use. This car sits for months on end in my garage. I go start it, it doesn't start up great, it misses a little bit, but it passes the blow-by test. It also uses a quart of oil every 1,400 miles or so. The car's fast though, it runs good, you know, but it passes the blow-by test every time. Anybody walking up to this car and testing it would be like, oh my gosh, it's great. You know, so it doesn't always hold up. Now, is it a great car? Absolutely. It runs fantastic. You know, I have major plans for this car sometime in the future once I get my 83 300D fully repainted and restored. But I want all of you to know that the blow-by test is a stupid metric for determining whether a car is any good or not. It is absolutely a stupid metric. All it means is that the valves probably need to be adjusted and the engine has a bunch of carbon in it. So don't use it as an indicator of whether you're going to buy a car or not. You know, thankfully I think John is going to get this 240D because I was able to explain to him that because the car started so easily, even after being neglected for so long, that it's probably a good car. And I want all of you to understand the same exact thing, that you shouldn't be using the blow-by test as a substitution for real-world maintenance and real-world measurements of compression and oil consumption and power output and cold starting interval, etc., etc. So in the meantime, if you enjoyed watching this video and you're not entirely sure about whether or not the stuff you're hearing on YouTube from other Mercedes channels is true or not, check in with us. Leave a comment below, and usually after our videos drop, I go in and I try to answer the first 50 or so comments. In the meantime, don't judge your Mercedes Benz on non-real world, non-measurement related data. Just enjoy driving and maintaining the car. And if you're a Patreon supporter, thank you so much, and enjoy driving your Mercedes Benz.